Welcome to the Lingo Lab, the show where we break down industry buzzwords into everyday language. If you've ever sat in a meeting with a branding agency and felt like everyone was speaking a foreign language, you're not alone. Today's episode is perfect. If you're building a business, managing a brand, or just trying to make sense of what your designer or marketer is actually saying, we're diving into branding, a field full of jargon that sounds fancy, but often means something very simple. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the key terms, the ideas behind them, and most importantly, how to apply them. At its core, a brand is not your logo. It's not your website. It's not even your product. A brand is the feeling someone gets when they think about you or your business. It's the emotional and psychological relationship you have with your customers. Think of it like a reputation. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. The term brand comes from the Old Norse word branda, which means to burn. It was used to refer to the practice of burning a mark onto livestock to signify ownership. Over time, the idea of marking something to signify identity evolved to the modern concept of branding, not just marking ownership, but creating distinctiveness. Imagine you're in the supermarket looking at two bottles of olive oil. One has a clean, minimal design with a sleek font and a story on the label about a small family farm in Italy. The other has no branding at all, just olive oil in block letters. Which one do you pick? The one with the family that feels trustworthy and familiar, right? That's the power of branding in action. It's more than packaging. It's trust, personality, and storytelling all wrapped into one. Brand identity is the collection of all elements that a company creates to portray the right image to its audience. This includes your logo, color palette, typography, packaging, messaging, and more. It's like the clothes your brand wears and the tone in which it speaks. I think of your brand as a person. Brand identity is how that person dresses, walks, talks, and interacts with others. If your brand were at a party, would it be wearing a tuxedo or ripped jeans? Would it be telling jokes or giving a speech? Or all of this is part of its identity. The term brand identity emerged in the 20th century alongside the rise of corporate design systems pioneered by companies like IBM and Coca-Cola, who realized that consistency across all communication touchpoints builds familiarity and familiarity builds trust. Logo. A logo is a symbol, word mark, or combination of both that visually represents your brand. It's one of the most instantly recognizable elements of your brand identity. People often think of a logo as the brand itself, but it's more like the face of the brand. The word logo comes from the Greek word logos, meaning word. Originally, logos were purely typographic. Think of classic newspaper mastheads or word-based branding like Coca-Cola. As graphic design evolved, logos expanded to include symbols and abstract marks. Apple's bitten apple, Nike's swoosh, and McDonald's golden arches are perfect examples of logos that carry meaning far beyond their shape. A good logo is simple, memorable, versatile, and relevant. It should work at a tiny size on a phone screen and on a billboard. It should be effective in black and white as well as in color. It should communicate something about your brand's personality without needing explanation. Think of your logo like a handshake. It's often the first impression. And like a good handshake, it should feel confident, clear, and consistent every time someone encounters it. Typography refers to the style, arrangement, and appearance of text. In branding, it plays a massive role in how your message is delivered and how your brand is perceived. It's not just about choosing a font, it's about communicating tone, emotion, and style through type. The term comes from the Greek words typos, form, and graphia, writing. Typography dates back to the invention of movable type in the 15th century. In branding, it gained serious importance in the 20th century, particularly with the rise of Swiss design and modernist principles that emphasize clarity, readability, and grid systems. Serif fonts, like Times New Roman, have little feet or strokes at the ends of letters and are often associated with tradition, reliability, and professionalism. Sans serif fonts like Helvetica or Arial, lack those strokes, giving a modern, clean, and accessible look. Script fonts can feel elegant or personal. Monospace fonts evoke tech and code. Choosing typography is like choosing your tone of voice. Imagine getting a wedding invite in Comic Sans. Jarring, right? Typography sets the mood and can either build or break your brand credibility. A color palette is the specific set of colors chosen to represent a brand. These colors are used across all brand materials, logo, website, social media, packaging to create a consistent visual language. Colors evoke emotion. Red can communicate passion or urgency. Blue suggests trust and reliability. Green is often associated with growth or eco friendliness. Yellow sparks energy and optimism. Purple can suggest luxury or imagination. So the psychology of color in branding is powerful. So it influences perception and even buying behavior. There are also practical sides to color use. For print, you'll hear terms like CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. For digital, it's RGB, red, green, blue. And then there's hex codes, 6-digit codes used in web design to ensure exact color replication. A strong color palette usually includes a primary color, used most often, secondary colors for contrast or variety, and neutrals, white, black, grey, beige, to support the others. Think of your color palette like your wardrobe. You might have a signature color you wear often, a few accents to mix it up, and neutral tones to balance it all out. The goal is to be recognizable without being overwhelming. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key black. It's a color model used in print. When you're printing something like business cards, posters, or packaging, your printer uses these 4 colors in combination to create every other color on the page. Why those colors? Because they're subtractive primaries, meaning they subtract brightness from white paper to form different hues. It's the opposite of RGB, which we'll cover next, which adds light to black screens. In CMYK, layering cyan and yellow makes green, magenta, and yellow make red, and so on. Why is black called key? It comes from the old printing press days where black was the key plate used for detail and contrast. So when a designer says make sure it's in CMYK, they mean the file is prepared for print. Otherwise, the colors might come out wrong. It's like baking with the wrong ingredients. You'll still get a cake, but it won't look or taste the way you expected. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. It's the color model used for digital screens, phones, TVs, computers, websites, and anything that emits light. These colors combine additively, meaning the more light you add, the closer you get to white. All black, that's no light. Right? When you mix red and green, you get yellow. Blue and green make cyan, red and blue make magenta. All 3 together at full intensity, white. RGB is important because colors look different on screen than in print. A bright neon green might look electric on your phone, but could print out as dull brownish yellow if the file isn't converted properly. That's why designers always ask if something is for print or digital before choosing the color model. You can think of RGB like stage lighting. You shine different colored spotlights on a dark stage to create vibrant scenes. But if you tried to paint a poster with those same spotlights, it wouldn't work. Wrong tools for the job. A hex code is a 6-digit combination of letters and numbers used in digital design to specify exact colors. Hex stands for hexadecimal, a base 16 numbering system. And each pair of digits represents the amount of red, green, and blue in the color. For example, number hash white is white, maximum red, green, and blue, while number hash 00000 is black, no light at all. A bright blue might be something like number 007 BFF. Hex codes are critical in web and app design because they allow for precise, consistent color application across browsers and devices. When you're trying to match your logo color exactly on a website, a hex code is your best friend. Think of hex codes like paint swatches at a hardware store. You don't just say blue, you find your blue, the one that matches your brand tone exactly. Inconsistent color can make a brand look sloppy. Hex keeps it sharp. Kerning is the process of adjusting the space between individual letters or characters in a word. It's a typography technique that might seem insignificant, but it can make or break the visual appeal of your brand's text. The word kerning comes from the French word carne, referring to the corner or angle of a type block. In traditional printing, before digital typography, kerning was done manually by physically filing down the metal type blocks to allow letters to fit closer together. Good kerning creates harmony and balance in text, making it easier to read and more visually appealing. Poor kerning can create awkward gaps or crammed letters that distract from the message or even create unintended words or meanings. For instance, flick with poor kerning could look like, well, something else entirely. Professional designers obsess over kerning details that most people would never notice consciously, but subconsciously, we all notice. It's like when someone's wearing a shirt with slightly misaligned buttons. You might not immediately identify what's wrong, but something feels off. Next time you look at a luxury brand's logo, notice how perfectly spaced the letters are. That's intentional kerning at work. In the digital age, kerning has become more accessible, but it's still a skill that separates amateur design from professional work. The difference between something that looks almost right and something that looks refined. Tracking, often confused with kerning, refers to the overall spacing between all characters in a block of text. While kerning adjusts space between specific letter pairs, tracking uniformly adjusts spacing across an entire word, sentence, or paragraph. The term comes from the early days of typesetting, when lines of type were called tracks. Adjusting tracking could make text more compact or more spread out, depending on the desired effect. In branding, tracking is a powerful tool. Tight tracking can create a sense of density and impact, while loose tracking conveys elegance and exclusivity. Luxury brands often use expanded tracking in their logos and headlines to create a sense of refinement and space. Think of how fashion brands like Vogue or Chanel often display their names with noticeably wide letter spacing. It's like the difference between a crowded street market and an exclusive boutique. One packs everything close together, creating energy and urgency. The other gives each item breathing room, suggesting importance and value. Tracking can also improve readability when used appropriately. Too tight, and words become difficult to distinguish. Too loose, and the eye struggles to connect letters into words. Good tracking is invisible to the average reader, but contributes significantly to the overall impression of the text. White space, also called negative space, refers to the empty areas in a design, the spaces between elements, margins, padding, and any area not occupied by text or graphics. Despite its name, white space doesn't have to be white. It's simply the breathing room in a design. The concept of white space in design dates back to traditional Eastern art and was popularized in Western design during the modernist movement of the early 20th century. Pioneers like Jan Tschichold championed the idea that less is more and that emptiness itself could be a powerful design element. In branding, white space is a sign of confidence. It shows that a brand isn't trying to fill every inch with information or value propositions. Apple's product packaging and marketing are famous examples of effective white space use. Clean, minimal designs that let the product speak for itself. Think of white space like silence in a conversation. Without pauses, speech becomes overwhelming and incomprehensible. Similarly, without white space, designs become cluttered and difficult to process. Good white space use isn't about emptiness. It's about creating clarity and focus. Luxury brands often use abundant white space to create a sense of exclusivity and premium quality. Budget brands typically use less white space, filling designs with more information and offers. This isn't coincidental. It's a deliberate branding choice that signals how a company wants to be perceived. Brand voice is the distinct personality and tone a brand uses in all its communications. It's how your brand would sound if it could speak, the words it would choose, the attitude it would project, and the impression it would leave. The concept of brand voice developed alongside modern advertising in the early 20th century, but became more formalized in the 1990s as brands realized consistent communication was as important as consistent visuals. A brand voice can be professional, casual, quirky, authoritative, compassionate, or any combination of traits that aligns with your brand values and resonates with your audience. What matters is consistency. Your voice should be recognizable whether someone's reading your website, social media, packaging, or advertising. Consider how different these voices are. Like just do it, Nike versus think different. You have an apple versus taste the rainbow. Skittles. Each conveys a distinct personality that's instantly recognizable. Developing a brand voice is like creating a character for a novel. Yeah, what's their background? How do they speak? What words would they never use? Would they tell jokes, use slang, speak formally? The more detailed your brand voice guidelines, the more consistent your communication will be across different writers, platforms, and campaigns. Brand positioning is the strategic process of defining where your brand sits in the marketplace relative to competitors and in the minds of your target audience. It's about carving out a distinct, valuable, and credible space that only your brand can own. The term was popularized by Al Ries and Jack Trout in their 1981 book, Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind, though the concept existed in marketing circles before then. They argued that with increasing market noise, consumers categorize products in their minds, and the goal of positioning is to influence that categorization. A strong brand position answers key questions. What do we offer? Who is it for? Why is it different? Why should people care? It's not just about being different. It's about being different in a way that matters to your specific audience. Take Volvo, whose positioning has consistently centered on safety. They didn't just say, our cars are safe. They made safety their entire brand identity, even when competitors caught up on safety features. The position was so strong that many people still instantly think safety when they hear Volvo. Brand positioning is like choosing where to build your house. You consider the neighborhood, the view, the proximity to amenities, and what makes this location special. Once built, moving is difficult and expensive, which is why getting your positioning right from the start is so crucial. Brand equity refers to the value premium a company generates from a product with a recognizable name compared to a generic equivalent. It's the commercial value that comes from consumer perception of your brand rather than just the product itself. The term emerged in the 1980s as marketers began quantifying the financial value of brands. David Arker's 1991 book, Managing Brand Equity, popularized the concept, breaking it down into awareness, associations, perceived quality, and loyalty. Strong brand equity allows companies to charge premium prices, weather crises better, launch new products more successfully, and attract better employees and partners. It's an intangible asset that can be worth billions. In fact, brands like Apple, Google, and Amazon have brand values estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Think of brand equity like a bank account of goodwill and positive associations. Every good experience with your brand makes a deposit. Every poor experience makes a withdrawal. Over time, those deposits compound, creating a reservoir of positive sentiment that translates to business value. Coca-Cola is a classic example. In blind taste tests, people often prefer Pepsi, but when they know they're drinking Coke, their perception changes because of the brand's equity, built through decades of positive associations, consistent quality, and emotional connection. Brand guidelines, also called a brand style guide or brand book, are a comprehensive document that outlines the rules for how your brand presents itself in all contexts. It's essentially the constitution of your brand, the foundational document that keeps everything consistent and on strategy. The concept of brand guidelines evolved from corporate identity manuals of the 1960s and 70s. Companies like IBM and NASA created detailed standards for how their logos, colors, and design elements should be used. These guidelines maintained consistency across different departments, agencies, and locations. Today's brand guidelines typically cover visual elements: logo usage, color palette, typography, imagery style, verbal elements, tone of voice, messaging principles, taglines, and often extend to experience design, social media protocols, and even company culture. Brand guidelines are like the recipe for your grandmother's famous dish. Without it, everyone makes their own version, and soon the original is lost. The guidelines ensure that whether someone encounters your brand on Instagram, your website, or a billboard, they get the same core experience. For example, Uber's 2018 brand guidelines included incredibly specific rules about everything from the precise angle of their logo patterns to the exact tone of voice for different types of communications. This level of detail ensures that a global brand with thousands of contributors maintains a unified identity. A value proposition is a clear statement that explains how your product or service solves customers' problems, what specific benefits it delivers, and why customers should choose you over competitors. It's the primary reason a prospect should buy from you. The term gained popularity in the 1980s through the work of management consultants like Michael Porter and became a central concept in business strategy. A strong value proposition speaks directly to your customers' needs and desires while highlighting your unique advantage. A good value proposition is specific, addresses a real pain point, and focuses on benefits rather than features. It's not a slogan or tagline, it's a concise explanation of the value you provide. FedEx's original value proposition was when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. This directly addressed a pain point, uncertainty in delivery times, promised a specific benefit, overnight delivery, and differentiated them from competitors at the time. Think of your value proposition like an elevator pitch for your product. If you had 30 seconds to explain why someone should choose your brand, what would you say? The most compelling value propositions are simple enough to understand immediately, but powerful enough to change purchasing decisions. A brand archetype is a universally recognized character or persona that a brand embodies to connect with customers on a deeper psychological level. Based on Carl Jung's 12 primary archetypes, this concept helps brands communicate their values and personality in a way that resonates instinctively with audiences. The application of archetypes to branding gained popularity in the early 2000s with the publication of The Hero and the Outlaw by Margaret Mark and Carol Pearson. Though the underlying psychological principles date back to Jung's work in the early 20th century, the 12 common brand archetypes include the hero, Nike, the caregiver, Johnson and Johnson, the outlaw, Harley Davidson, the explorer, Jeep, the creator, Adobe, the magician, Apple, and the ruler, Microsoft, the innocent, Coca-Cola, and the sage, Patagonia, ruler, Mercedes-Benz, the magician, Disney, the sage, Google, the innocent, Coca-Cola, the jester, Old Spice, the everyman, IKEA, and the lover, Victoria's Secret. When a brand consistently embodies an archetype, it creates an instant emotional connection with customers who recognize and relate to that character. It's like meeting someone at a party and immediately thinking, I know what kind of person you are. For example, Apple embodies the creator archetype with its emphasis on innovation, imagination, and tools that help people express themselves. This archetype resonates with creative professionals and those who see themselves as thinking differently, exactly the audience Apple wants to attract. A brand touch point is any point of interaction between a brand and its customers or potential customers. These moments of contact shape how people perceive your brand and can range from direct interactions like using your product to indirect ones like seeing an advertisement. And the concept of managing touch points became prominent in the 1990s as companies began focusing on the entire customer journey rather than just individual transactions. It's closely related to customer experience management, which gained traction in the early 2000s. Touchpoints can be physical, stores, products, packaging, digital, website, social media, email, or human customer service, sales team. Each touchpoint is an opportunity to reinforce your brand promise or, if mishandled, to contradict it. A company like Starbucks manages hundreds of touchpoints, from the design of their stores to the temperature of their coffee, from their mobile app to the way baristas interact with customers. Each element is carefully crafted to deliver a consistent brand experience. Think of touch points like conversations with a friend. Each interaction builds on previous ones and contributes to your overall impression of the relationship. One bad conversation might be forgiven, but a pattern of poor interactions will damage the relationship permanently. Similarly, brands must monitor and manage every touch point to build and maintain strong customer relationships. Brand storytelling is the art of using narrative to connect your brand to customers with a focus on linking what you stand for to the values you share with your customers. It's not just telling a story about your brand, it's weaving your brand into stories that resonate emotionally with your audience. And the concept of storytelling in marketing dates back to the earliest advertisements, but it gained particular prominence in the digital age as traditional advertising became less effective and consumers sought deeper connections with brands. Effective brand storytelling has a clear narrative structure, characters, conflict resolution, and places the customer, not the brand, at the center of the story. It's authentic, consistent with your brand values, and strategically deployed across different channels and touch points. Nike's Just Do It campaign is a masterclass in brand storytelling. Rather than focusing on the features of their shoes, they tell stories of determination, perseverance, and athletic achievement, values that resonate with their target audience. Their customers become the heroes of these stories, with Nike products playing a supporting role in their personal journeys. Think of brand storytelling like a campfire tradition. The stories told around the fire bind the community together, pass on values, and create shared meaning. Similarly, brand stories create emotional connections that go beyond functional benefits, fostering loyalty and advocacy. Brand architecture is the organized structure of a company's brands, products, and services and how they relate to one another. It's essentially the family tree of your brand portfolio, showing how different offerings connect and support each other. And the systematic approach to brand architecture developed in the 1990s as companies expanded their product lines and acquired other businesses, creating complex brand portfolios that needed coherent organization. There are several common brand architecture models. Monolithic branded house, one master brand extends across all products, e.g., Google's products like Google Maps, Google Drive. Endorsed, sub brands connected to a parent brand, e.g., Nestle Kit Kat, where Nestle endorses the product. House of brands, separate, distinct brands under one corporate umbrella, e.g., Procter and Gamble, owning Tide, Pampers, Gillette. Hybrid, a mix of approaches for different product lines. The right architecture depends on your business strategy, target markets, and how much brand equity transfer you want between products. Think of brand architecture like a family surname. In some families, everyone shares the same last name, monolithic. In others, married members might hyphenate or keep their original name, endorsed. In blended families, different members might have entirely different surnames, house of brands. Apple's brand architecture shifted over time. They moved from a product naming approach, Apple II, Apple III, to a more monolithic structure where Apple is the master brand and products like iPhone and MacBook are sub brands that clearly belong to the Apple family. Brand differentiation is the process of distinguishing your brand from competitors in ways that matter to your target audience. It's about identifying and emphasizing the unique aspects of your brand that give customers a reason to choose you over alternatives. The concept of differentiation was popularized by Michael Porter in his 1985 book, Competitive Advantage, where he identified it as one of three generic strategies for outperforming competitors, along with cost leadership and focus. Effective differentiation can be based on various factors: product features, quality, design, service, price, company values, or customer experience. The key is that the differentiation must be meaningful to your target audience, sustainable over time, and difficult for competitors to copy. Tesla differentiated itself not just through electric vehicles, which existed before, but by making them high performance, technologically advanced, and stylish, changing the perception of electric cars from eco friendly compromises to desirable luxury items. Think of brand differentiation like your personal style. In a room full of people wearing similar clothes, what makes you stand out? Maybe it's a signature accessory, a particular color you always wear, or a unique way of putting outfits together. Similarly, brands need to find their signature elements that make them recognizable and preferable in a crowded marketplace. Brand consistency is the practice of delivering messages, visual elements, and experiences that are uniform across all brand touchpoints and aligned with your brand strategy. It's about creating a cohesive brand identity that customers can recognize and trust, regardless of when or where they encounter your brand. The principle of consistency in branding emerged alongside mass marketing in the early 20th century. As brands expanded across regions and media channels, maintaining a consistent presentation became essential for building recognition and trust. Consistency doesn't mean rigidity or monotony. It means having a clear set of brand guidelines and applying them thoughtfully across different contexts. Your Instagram account might have a different energy than your annual report, but they should feel like they come from the same brand DNA. The benefits of consistency are tangible. Studies show that consistent presentation of a brand can increase revenue by up to 23%. When customers know what to expect from your brand, they develop comfort and trust. Inconsistency, on the other hand, creates cognitive dissonance and uncertainty. Think of brand consistency like a friendship. If your friend behaves completely differently every time you meet, different values, different communication style, different personality, you'd never develop trust. The same applies to brands. Consistency doesn't mean never evolving. It means changing thoughtfully and bringing your audience along for the journey. Brand extension is the strategy of using an established brand name to launch a new product in a different category. It leverages existing brand equity and customer loyalty to enter new markets more efficiently than creating a brand from scratch. The systematic practice of brand extension became popular in the 1970s and 80s as companies sought ways to grow without the massive investment of building new brands. The strategy was formalized in David Acker's influential works on brand management in the 1990s. Successful brand extensions make sense to consumers. There's a logical connection between the original product and the new offering. Virgin expanded from records to airlines to financial services, all unified by Richard Branson's rebellious, customer focused philosophy. Amazon extended from books to become the everything store based on its expertise in e commerce and customer service. But brand extensions can fail when the connection feels forced or dilutes the original brand's meaning. Harley Davidson perfume and Colgate kitchen entrees are famous examples of extensions that confused customers and damaged brand perception. The best way to think about brand extension is like introducing a friend to a new social circle. If your friend is known for being the life of the party, people will easily accept them in a nightclub setting. But if you suddenly present them as a financial advisor, people might be skeptical. Brand extensions work when they feel authentic to the brand's core identity and values. Brand awareness is the extent to which consumers recognize and recall your brand. It's the first step in the customer journey. Before consideration, preference, or purchase, people need to know you exist. The concept has been fundamental to advertising since its earliest days, but became more formally studied in the mid 20th century as marketers sought to measure the effectiveness of their campaigns beyond simple sales figures. Brand awareness exists on a spectrum. At the lowest level, aided awareness means consumers recognize your brand when prompted. Have you heard of Nike? Unaided awareness means they can recall your brand without prompting when thinking about your category. Name some sportswear brands. Top of mind awareness means yours is the first brand they think of in your category. Creating awareness is often the primary goal of advertising for new or growing brands. Established brands focus on maintaining awareness against competitors. It's why Coca-Cola, despite having near universal recognition, continues to advertise heavily, not to introduce themselves, but to stay top of mind. Think of brand awareness like fame for a person. Some people need an introduction. This is Taylor, she's a singer. Others are instantly recognizable by first name alone. Taylor Swift. And a select few are so famous, they're recognized by a single attribute, a silhouette, a logo, or even a color scheme. That's the power of strong brand awareness. Brand loyalty is the tendency of consumers to continue purchasing from the same brand rather than switching to competitors. It's the emotional commitment customers make to your brand that goes beyond rational factors like price or convenience. The study of brand loyalty emerged in the 1920s and 30s as marketers began to recognize the value of repeat customers. In 1956, an article in the Harvard Business Review by Mason Hare introduced the concept that brand preferences have psychological dimensions beyond product features. True brand loyalty is more than just repeat purchasing. It involves an emotional attachment and identification with the brand. Apple users don't just buy Apple products repeatedly because they work well. Many see themselves as Apple people with an emotional connection to the brand's values and community. Brand loyalty delivers tremendous business value. The cost of acquiring a new customer is typically 5 to 25 times higher than retaining an existing one. Loyal customers are less price sensitive, more likely to try new products from the brand, and become advocates who bring in new customers through word of mouth. Think of brand loyalty like a relationship. At first, you might choose someone based on attraction, awareness, and first impressions, consideration. But lasting relationships are built on shared values, consistent positive experiences, and emotional connection. The same principles apply to building loyalty to your brand. A brand activation refers to the campaigns, events, or experiences designed to generate consumer interaction with a brand. It's about bringing your brand to life in ways that create direct engagement and emotional connections with your audience. The term gained popularity in the 2000s as traditional advertising became less effective and marketers sought more experiential ways to connect with consumers. It represents a shift from passive brand communication to active participation. Brand activations can take many forms: pop up shops, interactive installations, sampling events, competitions, or digital experiences. What unites them is that they turn passive observers into active participants in your brand story. Red Bull has mastered brand activation with events like the Flug Tag homemade flying machine competition and extreme sports sponsorships. These activations don't just advertise energy drinks. They create experiences that embody Red Bull's Gives You Wings brand promise. Think of brand activation like the difference between reading someone's dating profile and going on an actual date. The profile gives you information, but the date gives you an experience, a chance to interact, engage emotions, and create memories. Similarly, brand activations create memorable experiences that deepen the connection between consumers and brands. A brand audit is a comprehensive examination of a brand's current position, including its strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. It's like a health checkup for your brand, assessing everything from visual identity to customer perception. The systematic approach to brand auditing developed in the 1990s as the value of brands as business assets became more widely recognized. Companies needed structured ways to evaluate and improve these increasingly valuable intangible assets. A thorough brand audit typically includes internal analysis, how well the brand aligns with business objectives and is understood by employees, external analysis, how customers in the market perceive the brand, and competitive analysis, how the brand compares to alternatives. Brand audits are conducted for various reasons: before a rebrand, after a merger or acquisition, when entering new markets, or simply as regular maintenance to keep the brand healthy and relevant. Think of a brand audit like an annual physical exam. Even if you feel fine, regular checkups can identify potential issues before they become serious problems. Similarly, brand audits can reveal disconnects between your intended brand and actual perception, inconsistencies across touch points, or emerging market trends that present opportunities or threats. Starbucks conducted a comprehensive brand audit in 2011 that revealed their rapid expansion had diluted their premium coffee shop experience. This led to their back to basics approach, retraining baristas and refocusing on coffee quality rather than selling CDs and other non core products. A brand promise is the commitment or expectation that a brand creates in the minds of its customers. It's what people can count on receiving every time they interact with your products, services, or organization. The concept emerged as brands evolved from simple markers of ownership to carriers of meaning and value. In the mid 20th century, as consumer choice expanded dramatically, brands needed to make clear promises about what made them different and dependable. A good brand promise is relevant, addresses something customers care about, credible, you can actually deliver it, sustainable, you can maintain it over time, and differentiating sets you apart from competitors. FedEx's original promise, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, perfectly exemplifies these qualities. It addressed a real customer need, guaranteed delivery timing, was something they built their entire operation to deliver, became sustainable through their logistics network, and clearly differentiated them from slower shipping options. Think of a brand promise like a friend saying, I'll always be there when you need me. It creates an expectation that, when consistently fulfilled, builds deep trust and loyalty. When broken, however, it can damage the relationship severely. Similarly, brands that fail to deliver on their promises lose trust quickly and find it very difficult to rebuild. Rebranding is the process of changing the corporate image of an organization. It's a market strategy of giving a new name, symbol, or change in design to an existing brand. The goal is to create a different identity from its competitors in the market. And the practice of deliberately changing a brand's identity dates back to the early 20th century, but became more common in the 1970s and 80s as companies sought to update aging images or distance themselves from negative associations. Your rebranding can be evolutionary, subtle updates that maintain brand recognition, or revolutionary, complete transformation. It can be driven by various factors: mergers and acquisitions, legal issues, reputation problems, outdated image, new leadership, or shifts in business strategy. Successful rebranding requires careful planning and execution. Burberry's transformation from a dated brand associated with counterfeit products and chav culture to a luxury fashion powerhouse is often cited as a masterclass in rebranding. By carefully updating their iconic check pattern, bringing in famous models and photographers, and elevating their product design, they completely shifted perceptions while maintaining their heritage elements. Think of rebranding like reinventing yourself after a major life change, whether it's a new career, moving to a new city, or recovering from a setback. The core of who you are remains, but how you present yourself to the world shifts significantly. The most successful personal reinventions, like the most successful rebrands, honor the authentic core while evolving the external expression. Brand strategy is the long term plan for developing a successful brand in order to achieve specific business goals. It defines what your brand stands for, what it promises, and what personality it conveys to customers. The formal discipline of brand strategy emerged in the 1980s and 90s as companies began treating brands as valuable business assets rather than just marketing tools. David Acker's work on strategic brand management was particularly influential in elevating branding from a tactical to a strategic function. A comprehensive brand strategy covers several key components: purpose, why you exist beyond making money; positioning, how you're different from competitors; promise, what customers can expect; personality, how your brand speaks and behaves; and proposition, the value you deliver to customers. Strong brand strategies are rooted in business reality, but aspire to something greater. Tesla's brand strategy isn't just about selling electric cars. It's about accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. This larger purpose informs everything from their product development to their communication style. Think of brand strategy like planning a journey. You need to know where you're starting from, current brand perception, where you want to go, desired brand perception, and the route you'll take to get there, brand initiatives and experiences. Without this strategic map, branding efforts become disconnected tactical exercises that don't build consistent, meaningful impressions over time. A great example is how Dove transformed from a soap brand to a champion of real beauty and self esteem. This wasn't just a new advertising campaign, it was a fundamental brand strategy shift that has guided their product development, marketing, and social initiatives for nearly 2 decades. And there you have it, 30 branding terms demystified. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You now have the vocabulary to understand and contribute to conversations about branding with confidence. Remember that great brands aren't built overnight. They're the result of consistent effort, authentic expression, and genuine connection with audiences. Whether you're building your personal brand or managing a global corporation, the principles we've discussed today apply across the board. And in our next episode of the Lingo Lab, we'll be tackling digital marketing jargon from SEO and SEM to CTR and CPA. Until then, thanks for listening. And remember, you don't need fancy words to build a great brand, but understanding the language helps you navigate the journey more effectively. This has been the Lingo Lab. I'm your host, and I'll catch you next time.